In this one, we will be diving more in depth into the mini panel, and more specifically, we will be taking a look at what the mini panel can control within the curve section of Davinci. And actually, it can control everything. Let's begin by pressing the palette selection button that says curves. And right away, it takes us into the custom curve. The custom curve is the main curve in the curves. We have 6 knobs here that controls the curve. So if we want to make a typical S curve, we can take the 20% and drag down, and we can take the 80% and drag up. And now we have created a slight S curve. And the same goes for the 40 and 60. Now you can see on the curve that we have 4 different control points, which we are controlling with the panel. And for the 0% and the 100%, we can control that as well by dragging it up or dragging it down. So let's go ahead and label that custom curve. Let's add a new node. Take a look at the 8 soft buttons on the top of the screens. It lets you choose between the custom curve, the hue versus hue curve, hue versus sat, hue versus luminance, luminance versus saturation, saturation versus saturation, saturation versus luminance. If we take hue versus hue, now the mini panel lets us adjust 6 different hues. If, for example, we would like to adjust the yellow hue, we can take that and drag it up. So right away, when we start to adjust the yellow hue, you can see that the panel introduces the input hue. It lets us change the position of the hue. So if we want to go over to the green, for example, we can just drag it over. And then say, for example, we would like to move the green. We could just take the green, adjust it slightly, and take the input hue and drag it over towards the blue, for example. And then we would like to adjust the magenta. You can go over here, just do the same. So let's go ahead and label that as well, hue versus hue. And that works the same for everything. So hue versus sat, exactly the same principles. Hue versus luminance, exactly the same. If we go over to luminance versus sat, then the panel will only let us control 4 points. So we have the highlight, and the input luminance is the same as the input hue was before. The shadows, you can adjust it. The black and the white, exactly the same. And this goes for sat versus sat, sat versus luminance. You also have the 4 points, lum versus sat. So that is really the main functions. But we have quite a lot more to cover here, because if we go over to the custom curves again, if you take a look at the screens, you can see 4 different dots. And the 4 different dots means that we have 4 different menus. So right now we're in the first menu section. If we press the right arrow key here, it takes us over to the intensity. And if you take a look at the screen, you can see the intensity sliders right here. And what those sliders does, it's kind of obvious. They control the intensity of the curves. So if we hit the left arrow and go back to the custom curve, if we make one more S curve like this, and then head over into the intensity, we can adjust the intensity of that curve we just created. So if we go down to 50, we now have reduced the curve's intensity with 50%. And also, if you want to reset anything you have controlled with the knobs, you can just press the knob and it will reset it. So if we hit the right arrow one more time, we come into the low clip and the low soft, which you can see on the screen right here. And what the low clip does is that basically it takes the 0 point of the image and move it up. So if you look at the scopes, we are now clipping at a much higher value than before. And the lower soft is not exactly the same. If we drag it up, you can see that it basically compresses the shadows rather than clipping them. Let's go ahead and reset that. Take one more step to the right. You can see that we are now in the 4th and last menu. and it lets us control the high clip and the high soft. That is actually the same as the low and the low soft. It just lets you clip the highlights instead, or with the high soft, you compress the highlights rather than clipping them. You probably wonder by now why it's a red, green, and the blue channel, and why I only have adjusted all of them at the same time with the 4th knobs. If we go back to the first menu, by hitting the left arrow key 4 times, we are now presented in the top right corner with tools. Let's first go ahead and reset this node. Now when we have hit the tool button, you can see that we have gang channels right here. That button lets us unlink the luminance channel, the red channel, the green channel, and the blue channel. So what we can do now is that we can ungang them. So right now we are in the luminance channel, which lets us control the luminance curve. Say for example, we would like to control the red curve. We press red, and now we have control over the red channel. And the same goes for green and blue. So if we make some small adjustments here to the blue channel, the same for the green channel, like that. If we go back to the intensity menu, now we can control the intensity of each curve that we have been doing adjustments to make it look just as you want. And the same goes for the next 2 menus. For the low soft, for example, we can take the blue and we can compress the shadows, or we can compress the highlights of the blue curve. We have one more button to cover, and that is the YSFX. If we start dragging this knob over to the right, we have now inverted all the color channels for the curves. So if we reset that and we ungang the channels, then it lets us invert the blue channel, for example. Or we can invert the green channel, or we can invert the red channel, or the Luma channel. I have no idea when I will use that, but it's there. So that's pretty much it, what you can do with the panel in the curve section. I hope you find this helpful, and please let me know if there is something that you would like me to cover with what you can do with the mini panel. If you feel like there was something that was unclear, or you would like me to answer about the curves that we went over right now, just please leave me a comment and I will try to answer as best I can. Thanks for watching. Bye.